Hey, Politicals, welcome back to Based Behavior, the podcast for conservative women who are smart and bold and officially done pretending that politics doesn't touch every part of our lives. If you're new here, you just found your people, and if you've been here since the beginning, you already know that we do not do lukewarm takes around here. Today, we've got a lot to cover. First up, Jimmy Kimmel finally faces the music after years of trashing conservatives. Then we're breaking down the Democrats' very real civil war brewing in New York. And then finally, we're digging into this week's continuing resolution, what it actually is, and what a government shutdown would look like if it doesn't pass by the end of the month. There's a lot happening in politics this week, so let's get into it. All right, Politicals, we need to talk about Jimmy Kimmel. For years, this man has been shoved down our throats as the face of late night comedy. Only it hasn't been comedy for a long time. It's been lectures, smug little monologues where he sneers at conservatives and acts like his audience is a bunch of clapping seals who will laugh on command. After years of sliding ratings and advertisers pulling out and viewers tuning out, ABC finally had a reason to cut him loose because last week, Kimmel went on air and lied about the assassination of Charlie Kirk.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half staff, which got some criticism.
This was not an exaggeration, not a slip of the tongue. It was a blatant, reckless lie in the middle of one of the darkest weeks for conservatives, when emotions were already raw. He pushed a false narrative about the shooter, about the motive, and the fallout was immediate. Okay, affiliates refused to carry the episode, advertisers backed away, regulators blasted the network, and ABC said, "That's it, you're done." Now, of course, the left instantly went into meltdown mode and said, "This is censorship. Conservatives are supposed to be against cancel culture." Wrong. Learn the difference. Cancel culture is when a mob, probably full of leftists, try to ruin someone's life for holding the wrong opinion or for telling a joke back in like 2009. This is consequence culture. When you spread lies on national television about a political assassination, you don't get to hide behind free speech and then keep cashing your paycheck. Free speech means that the government can't throw you in jail for your words. It does not mean that ABC is required to bankroll you while you lie. And here's the irony, okay? Kimmel and his defenders spent years telling conservatives, if you don't like it, don't watch it. Well, we didn't, and ratings tanked, and now he's off the air. That's not censorship, that's accountability. Let's also not forget that this isn't happening in a vacuum. The late night model has been dying for years. People don't want to end their days with partisan lectures. They want to laugh, to relax, to feel joy. Kimmel turned that into a political sermon. And when he crossed the line on Charlie Kirk's death, that was the last straw. So when the left cries censorship, I just have to laugh because this is justice. This is what it looks like when the same standards that they tried to weaponize against us finally boomerang back to them. And if you ask me, it couldn't have happened to a more deserving guy. Jimmy Kimmel didn't get canceled, he got consequences. So if you've been following this whole ordeal, let me know your thoughts. Do you think he deserved what he had coming? Okay, before we move into our next story, I'm gonna preface this little personal life update by saying that I know my problems are not real problems, okay? There are people dealing with far heavier things than I am at this moment, so I absolutely do not take this seriously, but I am in a bit of a dilemma and I would love your input. I have no idea what my family should dress up as for Halloween this year. I'll walk you back in time to share what some of our family costumes have been in years past. Our first family Halloween was after my daughter Kennedy was born. She was almost a year old here, and Matt and I were zookeepers, and she was a baby elephant. Then in 2023, Bo had just been born, and I was like less than 2 months postpartum. So we went with a Mizzou family theme where Kennedy was a Mizzou cheerleader, baby Bo was a Mizzou football player, and my husband and I were refs because the outfits were really comfy and easy. Quick sidebar, Matt and I were at the game this past weekend, and our Mizzou Tigers are now 4-0, so we love to see it. Then last year, we were all the Incredibles, and we actually got a ton of compliments on this theme, so I feel like we have to step it up this year with something just as great. So if you have any ideas, or if you've had a really successful themed Halloween costume idea from a past year, let me know and show me the photos. I'm open to any and all age-appropriate ideas. My kids really love Spidey and His Amazing Friends and Mickey Mouse right now, but I haven't seen a cute way to turn either of those themes into like a 4-person family group costume. I mean, I guess with Mickey we could, but my daughter would probably call dibs on Minnie, which means I would have to be Daisy Duck, and I really don't want to dress up as Daisy Duck. So let me know what ideas you have so I can steal them. Now let's talk about the Democrats, because while they've spent years pointing fingers at Republicans for so-called infighting, the truth is that their own party is collapsing from the inside. And the latest example is what's happening in New York. So here's what's going on. The state party chairman, Jay Jacobs, just refused to endorse Zohran Mamdani. Now, if that name sounds familiar, we've talked about him here on the show before, and he's all over the news. Mamdani is basically the poster child for the Democrat Socialists of America. He's young and like TikTok famous and completely embraced by AOC and the squad. He's pushing everything from rent freezes to a Green New Deal for New York. But Jacobs said no. He flat out rejected him, saying that Mamdani is a socialist, not a Democrat, trying to really draw that distinction there. And that one decision really ripped the lid off of a civil war that the left has been trying to hide. On one side, you've got the radicals, you've got Mamdani, you've got AOC and Bernie, who think the future of the party truly is full-blown socialism. On the other side, you've got the establishment, people like Jacobs and Adams, who know that usual deep blue voters don't want any part of that. And now they're at each other's throats. Progressives are demanding that Jacobs resigns, and AOC is throwing out public shade, and the whole thing is spilling into the press because the fracture is too big to ignore at this point. So let's be clear, this isn't just about New York politics. It's actually a preview of what I think we're going to see the Democratic Party have to deal with in future elections nationwide. The radicals have energy and online influence, sure, but their policies are electoral suicide, okay? The establishment knows that. They are terrified of letting the party get dragged further and further to the left, but they also don't know how to stop it without alienating their base. I mean, the real irony is that Democrats love to lecture Republicans about extremism, but right now they are the ones who are openly fighting over whether they should embrace socialism as their identity. Think about that. They're not debating tax rates or spending levels. They are literally debating whether a self-identified socialist belongs in their party. That tells you everything about how far left they've already gone. And the best part is that no matter who wins this fight, Democrats are going to lose. If the radicals win, then the moderates and the suburban voters check out. If the establishment wins, then the squad and their fan base are going to revolt and probably sit out elections. Either way, the so-called big tent party keeps shrinking. So don't let the media spin this just as a New York story. It's a national problem for Democrats, and the cracks are starting to show. My take, I think that the Democrats built this monster. They platformed the radicals, they gave them the mic, and now the radicals are coming for the keys to the kingdom. Let me know what you think. Who do you think comes out on top of all of this? Will it be the AOC socialist wing, or will it be the Democrat establishment? And then what does that mean in for 2026 and 2028. I think one thing is very clear: the Democrats' civil war is no longer hiding in the shadows. It is out in the open, and it's only going to get uglier. Okay, let's move into the hot take hotline. So, this week's submission wasn't really a question, it was more of a complaint. And honestly, I felt this one in my soul. So, let's talk about it. Here is what this follower said: I really am trying to learn more about conservative politics and follow conservative voices, but some of the influencers seem so fake and I can't stand it. Girl, same. If you have been following me for a while, you already know that there is one particular female conservative out there that I just cannot stand. I'm not going to name names, but if you know, you know. Every few years, she reinvents her brand to match whatever's trendy at the moment. And listen, I get that people evolve, but there's a difference between growing and then completely shape shifting every time that the algorithm shifts. That's when it stops feeling authentic and it starts feeling fake. But here's the good news, guys. There are so many incredible commentators and content creators and podcasters in the conservative space, and you're not going to connect with all of them. That's okay. Find the ones who you actually do vibe with, the ones that you can trust to be consistent, the ones who actually make you think instead of just chasing clicks. So if someone feels fake to you, you don't have to follow them, okay? Build your feed how you want to, build your own community of voices that speak to you. Because one of the best things about the conservative movement right now in this time is that there is no shortage of bold, smart women and men stepping up and saying what needs to be said. Let me know your thoughts, and if you agree with this follower. Have you found that some of the people in the conservative movement have been coming off as more fake than factual lately? You don't need to name names, but you can let us know where you're at on this. All right, for our last big story of the episode, I want to talk about something that you're about to hear a lot about, okay? You're going to hear the letters CR tossed around a lot in the coming weeks, and if you don't live and breathe Congress, it can sound like insider baseball to some. So here's why it matters. The government was just days away from running out of money, and instead of fixing the mess, Congress grabbed the duct tape and called it a win. So first things first, CR stands for Continuing Resolution. It's Congress's way of buying time when they can't agree on a real budget. So instead of passing the 12 separate appropriation bills that are supposed to fund every part of the government, they pass a CR that says, keep spending at last year's levels for now, and then we'll just fight about the rest of it all later. It's not a solution, it's procrastination. And here's the deadline that makes this urgent: September 30th, like the end of this month. That is the end of the fiscal year. So if Congress doesn't pass a full budget or at least a CR by then funding runs out and the government shuts down. So now here's what just happened this past week. The House did pass a CR, and it wasn't just a blank check, thankfully. Conservatives actually secured some wins in this version. About $13 billion, I think, was cut from non-defense domestic spending. Basically, that means that agencies and programs that were bloated with COVID-era funding are finally being trimmed back. Roughly $6 billion was added to defense because, while the left likes to funnel money into pet projects and climate schemes, it seems that Republicans on the Hill are finally saying national security should come first, and I love to see that. Border security also got a boost, so more money for enforcement, more money for resources to address the surge at the southern border and to make sure that our numbers stay down, which Americans made clear during the last election is a huge priority for them. I can't remember all of the details of it, but I do also believe that there was a section that added more funding for veterans care. Now, sure, that's not everything that Republicans wanted, but it's not nothing either. It's a statement that the House is at least trying to rein in spending and reprioritize. But the story doesn't end there. The bill now goes to the Senate, and that's where the real fight begins. Because even though President Trump is in the White House, the Senate's still pretty split, and Democrats are already talking about stripping out the cuts and removing the border funding and putting their own pet projects back in. The two chambers have to agree on one version before September 30th, or we are looking at a government shutdown. So, quick reality check, a shutdown does not mean that the government vanishes. We've actually been through this a few times in years past. So, Social Security checks are still going to go out. The military is still going to get paid. The mail will still run, although probably as ineffectively as it has been in recent months. National parks, though, they would close down. Federal workers who aren't like essential would be furloughed. And then, of course, the media would blame all of this on Republicans. That's kind of how the cycle works in the past few years that we've seen this happen. But here's the bigger problem. Even if this CR survives, okay, and Trump signs it, it's temporary. It buys a few weeks or maybe a couple of months, and then we're right back here with another deadline, another crisis, another patch job. So, why does it feel like this happens every single year? Because it basically does. Here's the truth. The last time that Congress consistently passed all 12 appropriations bills on time was back in the 1990s. Since then, they've almost always blown through the deadlines, relied on CRs, and then slapped together giant omnibus packages months into the fiscal year. The idea of a fully functioning budget process is basically extinct in DC. That's why we're sitting on $34 trillion in debt, because Congress hasn't done its job, not once or twice, but for decades. A CR is supposed to be a fallback, but instead it's become the way that Washington governs. So here's where we're at. The House did its job and passed a CR with some conservative wins, okay? Cuts to domestic programs, funding for defense and the border. The Senate fight will decide if those wins survive. And then even if they do, this is just another Band-Aid. The question is whether Republicans are finally going to use this moment, this time, as leverage for real spending reforms, or whether they'll cave to keep the headlines quiet and push the fight down the road again. Because at some point, somebody has to stop kicking the can. So let me hear from you. Do you think Republicans should hold the line on spending, even if it risks a shutdown? And do you think that Congress will ever go back to passing a real budget on time? Or are CRs just our new normal? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear where you stand. All right, that's it for this week's episode of Based Behavior. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and breaking down these stories together. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to hit the like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and then make sure that you're subscribed so that you never miss one of these Monday drops. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, tap follow and leave a 5-star review. It only takes a second, but it helps push conservative women's voices higher in the charts where they belong. And if you're craving some conversation during the week, come join us inside Politigals on Facebook. It is our private community where thousands of conservative women connect and swap stories and support each other. I'll link it in the description so that you can jump in if you feel like it. I'm Erica Choinka from Politics for Her. This was Based Behavior, and I'll see you next Monday with more unapologetic takes.